Welcome to Time Capsule, where we analyze history to find lessons worth learning. Today we're going to discuss the life of an American, compare it to the Romans and medieval peasants. The reason that we're going to go through this comparison is to show you the stark differences in the quality of life that people enjoy today versus their ancient counterparts. The reason for this is to show the significant trend and improvement of quality of life for the average American. I was looking for more statistics on a larger population sample for beyond Western Europe or even nationally or internationally, but I couldn't find the data necessary in the time period that I have to dedicate to this video. So this will have to suffice. What was life like for the average Roman? Their basic needs were met for society. There were, as long as you were a citizen of Rome, and I will address the fact that there was a large portion of the population that were slaves as well. So that has to be taken into account as well. But there were, for prolonged periods of time, daily grain allotments. So you would receive either as refined bread later in the Roman Republic or grain, which you'd have to bring to a granary or mill or baker to process and convert into bread for you. So that you'd be given like 90 pounds for the month or something equivalent to that. So you wouldn't starve. And there was a great amount of infrastructural development throughout the Roman Empire. It's famous for its roads, which allowed the Roman soldiers to travel quite quickly. The average person had almost no access to health care. It was abominable. The average lifespan was about 20 to 30 years, which is on average probably about a third of what it is today inside the United States. Social mobility was lacking, and it was unlikely that you would rise past your birth station. It was possible because if you served in the Roman legion for 25 years, you would become a citizen, as far as I'm aware. And there were different levels of citizenship as well available to the Romans. And it was a progressive system of becoming better and better. Not as in the quality of life for the average citizen necessarily improved so significantly, but that a person could move from one citizenship status to another. Education was available to those with funds, but unavailable to those without, or those that were near some sort of infrastructure that supported this. Like if you were closer to Rome, for instance, you'd probably have access to more public education and such. But if you're out in the countryside, education, you would be only trained with what your parents or the guild or whoever you were working with would be able to support you. If you're working for an artisan, for instance, would you get a lot of education in humanities? No, it wouldn't be applicable. And there was, in general, societal stability in Rome. And this Rome covers hundreds of years. So in the specific, was there? Absolutely not. I'm 100% sure on this. But the society of Rome continued and moved forward. A lot of the Romans lived in urban areas, and the housing varied based upon the class. An interesting thing that I found in my research was that the average citizen that was better off usually lived on the bottom floor of a Roman, what we would consider today an apartment complex or something like that. You'd live on the bottom because you'd have access to running water, for one, especially in the city of Rome. Two, you'd be able to escape in case of fire, because good luck if you're on the third, fifth, sixth, or seventh story. You would probably be burned to death. Now, let's do a comparison of what was life like for the average medieval peasant. This was a very, not necessarily subsistence type of living, because there was excess produced, which was given over to the lords or the manor, if it was in the manorial system, and as a form of tax. Life was pretty much centered around physical labor and planting, harvesting, and tending to livestock. It kind of sucked, to be honest with you. And many peasants were serfs. They were tied to the land and worked upon. They weren't allowed to leave the land, and the serfs owed labor rights and obligations to their lords in exchange for protection with the right to work the land. And that was the center of the economic system for the community. There was limited social mobility for individuals within the lower classes was typically restricted. Serfs were bound to their lord's land, and moving up the social ladder was challenging, if not impossible. I'm sure that there were instances of individuals rising through exceptional talent, marriage, or opportunity, but that was the exception rather than the rule. And basic living conditions, they kind of sucked. You'd live in a simple one room dwelling, a whole family of wattle and daub. Many families lived in multi generational households, sharing space with both humans and livestock. Can you imagine that? You'd have a cow in your house, a goat. And in general, it was very close to subsistence. The excess was given to the lords and also the church. Many peasants worked for the church. They provided agricultural subsidies. Well, not subsidies. They provided agricultural crops for the church, planted them and grew them specifically for it. And then the education, there was no formal education available to the lower classes. Perhaps if you were in the nobility, you might be able to get your hands on a book. Or if you were lucky enough to escape that and go into the church and become a member of the church. Religion played a significant role in society. It was a central institution. And the church provided a lot of social support systems, such as charity and welfare for the poor. I would say that's where the importance of a tithe actually came into hand, because a lot of the taxes that were paid, quote unquote, to a lord would be there for defense rather than for supporting the poor. And life was very, very hard, and you were required to deal with substantial hardships, including famine, disease, and war. Crop failures and natural disasters were disastrous. They could lead to food shortages and economic hardship. People would die. The average life expectancy was around 30 to 40 years old. That's when the time when a birthday was actually meaningful. If you only lived to be 30, every birthday counted. Every birthday was important. And infant mortality was around 30 to 50%. That's disastrous. Today, we live about double that. At least you're able to see your grandkids grow up on average if you're an American in modern day. How fortunate we are. Now, let's do a comparison. What is life like for the average American during the 21st century? The 21st century has witnessed significant advancements in technology, infrastructure, contributing to some of the best, highest standards of living ever seen. Most people have access to electricity, clean water, sanitation, heating and cooling systems, and the concept of retirement. Who would have dreamed of that even a few generations ago? It was only available to the elite, the rich. And education, the sheer amount of options that we have in this great country, for whether even if you continue to go on to university or college, as we call it here, or just in the public school system. People would only dream of this in the past. In healthcare, we have some of the best healthcare coverage inside the world. Now, I'm not talking about universal healthcare or anything like that, but we have great institutions and hospitals that are able to take care of people, to be able to help them through a lot of their hardships. And then there's also social safety nets that only people could only have dreamed of back then, like Medicare or Medicaid. And I'm not arguing the morality of either of those two institutions, but the overall quality of life improvement that exists for people that need them versus not having the access to healthcare at all. And there's a wide range of employment opportunities. We're far beyond subsistence, and we are allowed to specialize. And because of that, we have become a wealthy nation. And the technological advancements, even things like my smartphone, could have only been dreamed of a decade ago, 2 decades ago. These things weren't available. This is more computing power than anything probably in the 1990s combined. And something so small and so simple. And yes, there are social challenges, and yes, there is inequality. I'm not disagreeing with that. And yes, we do face problems like climate change, healthcare reform, but it just, the overall improvement of life is insane. I mean, even if you're looking on average, look at all the immense opportunities that we have for leisure, for time off, to be able to explore our passions, watch TV. It just, it's mind boggling. And then look at the quality of life. The average American today lives until they're 78 years of age. That's triple or double what it was in the Roman period and also the medieval period. That's insane. We have so much more opportunity for upward mobility too. There's no societal limitation saying you can't advance yourself to the upper echelon of society. Anyone can go out and start a business. Anyone, even if you're just doing average in this great country, you can still save for retirement. You can still live. And you can make lifestyle choices to greatly make that more easy or less difficult. And even the poorest of people have access to medical assistance in the United States. The poorest of the people inside the United States are what most people could only have dreamed of, even 4 or 5 generations ago, that standard of living that they have. Thank you for your time.